Ready to get into something pretty heavy.
Oh, yeah. Always up for a challenge.
Well, today we're tackling Hannah Arendt's The Human Condition.
Ooh, that's a big one.
It is. It's a book that really digs into what it means to be human, especially in a world where technology is, kind of taking over everything.
Right. Like, are we even in control anymore? It's a question Arendt was asking way back in the 1950s.
Yeah, and that's what's so crazy is that her ideas are even more relevant now than they were back then.
Absolutely.
We've got two sources that break down Arndt's work, and they are dense. She was a brilliant thinker, but sometimes it's tough to wrap your head around what she's saying.
Right. I mean, she wasn't exactly writing for a casual audience.
True. But that's why we're here to try and make it a little more accessible.
Exactly. Break it down, have some fun with it.
So let's jump in. Arendt starts with a really interesting image. It's 1957, and Sputnik has just launched.
Yeah, the world was freaking out.
Totally. But Arendt sees something more in that little satellite than just, a technological achievement.
Yeah, for her it was symbolic, of humanity's desire to kind of break free from our earthly limits.
Like a reach for the stars kind of thing.
Exactly. But it also raised this question for her, like, in our quest to conquer the cosmos, are we forgetting about what it means to be human right here on Earth?
Whoa, that's deep.
Right, and that's where her whole exploration of labor work and action comes in.
Okay, so three big concepts. Let's break them down.
Sure. So first up is labor. Arendt saw this as the never-ending cycle of tasks that we have to do just to survive.
Like the daily grind.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Growing food, cooking, cleaning, all that stuff. It's essential, but also kind of repetitive and focused on just consuming, not creating.
So it's like we're stuck on a hamster wheel,
Yeah.
always running, but not really getting anywhere.
Perfect analogy. And Arndt's point is that while labor is necessary, it doesn't really give us any lasting meaning or create anything that's going to outlive us.
Okay, so that's labor.
Yeah.
What about work? Is it just a fancy word for the same thing?
Not quite. Work for Arndt's is about building something that lasts. Creating something with meaning and permanence.
So like an architect designing a city that's going to stand for centuries.
Yeah, exactly. Or a craftsman making a piece of furniture that gets passed down through generations.
A family heirloom.
Right. It's about shaping the world around us, leaving a mark. And that gives us a sense of accomplishment and purpose that's different from just, meeting our basic needs through labor.
Gotcha. So it's not just about getting stuff done.
Mm-hmm.
It's about creating something that has value beyond just its immediate use.
Exactly. And that brings us to the third piece of the puzzle, action.
Okay. This is where things get interesting, right?
Definitely. Action is all about engaging in the public realm. Using our words and our deeds to actually shape the world around us.
So it's about more than just self-expression.
Right. It's about actively participating in shaping society in the future. It's about freedom and plurality and the potential to create a legacy that goes beyond our own individual lives.
I'm thinking about the ancient Greek polis, those public spaces where citizens debated ideas and made decisions together.
Yeah, Arndt saw that as kind of the ideal model for a vibrant public sphere where action could flourish.
And I bet she'd have some thoughts about how our modern public square stacks up.
Oh, she would. Especially social media.
Totally. So is that what she meant by action? Like tweeting about stuff?
Well, not exactly. Arndt was actually worried that in modern times, the line between the public and private realms was becoming blurred.
What do you mean?
Well, she saw that personal needs and economic concerns were starting to dominate public discourse, and that was shrinking the space for real political action and meaningful dialogue.
So it's like the difference between a lively town hall meeting where people are debating important issues versus, a comment section on a news article where everyone's just yelling at each other.
Exactly. One feels like active participation in shaping our world, and the other just feels kind of empty and unproductive. And aren't worried that this shift away from genuine public engagement was eroding our capacity for action.
So are we all just doomed to be passive consumers scrolling through endless feeds instead of active citizens shaping the world around us?
That's a good question. It's one Arendt wrestled with, for sure.
And did you think we were doomed?
Well, she wouldn't say doomed exactly, but she definitely saw some warning signs. And one of the biggest ones was the rise of mass production and consumerism.
Wait, well, how does that tie into the whole labor work action thing?
Well, Arendt argued that mass production prioritizes quantity over quality, disposability over durability. And it encourages us to just consume endlessly without really connecting with the things we buy or the process of creation.
So it's like the difference between buying a cheap, mass-produced shirt that falls apart after a few washes versus inheriting a beautifully crafted piece of furniture that's been in your family for generations.
Exactly. One is instantly forgettable, the other holds stories and meaning.
And Arndt's point is that this constant cycle of production and consumption can actually make us feel worldless, detached from the physical reality of the things we use and discard.
Yeah.
So it's not just our public spaces that we're losing, it's also our connection to the things we create and consume.
Right. And that worldlessness, she argued, further diminishes our capacity for action because when we're detached from the tangible world, it's harder to feel invested in shaping it, and making choices that have real consequences.
So we're becoming almost ghostly, just drifting through a world of stuff without really being anchored to anything.
That's a great way to put it. And it's a problem Arendt believed we needed to address if we wanted to reclaim our humanity and our ability to shape the world around us.
Okay, so this is heavy stuff. We've got labor work, action, mass production, consumerism, worldlessness. There's a lot to unpack here.
It is. But don't worry, we're just getting started. We'll dive deeper into all of this in the next part of our deep dive.
I'm ready when you are. Buckle up, everyone. This is going to get interesting.
I can't wait.
Okay, so last time we were talking about how all these forces, like mass production and consumerism, are making us feel worldless.
Right. And how that makes it harder to actually engage in meaningful action that can, shape the world around us.
It's a pretty bleak picture, honestly.
It can be, but Arendt wasn't all doom and gloom.
Oh, good. Because I need some hope right now.
She offered a way forward. It starts with understanding the power of a single act.
A single act.
Yeah, think about Rosa Parks refusing to give up her seat on the bus.
Right, that was huge.
Exactly. And it started with one person's choice to act.
So she's saying that even small acts can make a big difference.
Exactly. Human action is unpredictable. You can't always foresee the consequences, but that's what makes it so powerful.
So you're saying we shouldn't be afraid to act even if we don't know what the outcome will be.
Right. Because that's where the potential for real change lies, in those moments of uncertainty.
But with all the distractions in the world today, how do we even find the space to act?
It's tough, for sure. But it starts with being intentional about how we use our time and energy.
So like putting down our phones and actually looking around.
Exactly. What are the things that matter to you? What are the places where you can connect with others in a meaningful way?
So it's not just about changing the world. It's about changing our relationship to the world.
Exactly. And that means paying attention to what brings you joy, what connects you to something larger than yourself.
It's funny, we started talking about Sputnik, this symbol of humanity's ambition to reach beyond our limits. But maybe what Arendt was really trying to say is that the real adventure is right here, in the messiness and beauty of the human condition.
That's a beautiful way to put it, and it's a challenge to really embrace that in a world that's so obsessed with progress and technology.
Speaking of technology, AI is everywhere these days. How do we reconcile Arndt's ideas with the reality of a world that's becoming increasingly automated?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's one that Arendt was already grappling with back in the 50s.
So she saw this coming.
She did. She was worried about the potential for automation to replace human action and thought.
So it's not about rejecting technology altogether.
Right. It's about being mindful of how we use it, making sure it serves human flourishing, rather than, making us obsolete.
Okay, I'm starting to see the connection here. But how do we actually do that? Like, practically speaking, how do we ensure that technology doesn't end up controlling us?
It starts with recognizing that we have a choice. We can choose to be passive consumers of technology, or we can choose to be active creators.
So it's about using technology as a tool rather than letting it use us.
Exactly. And that means being critical of the systems we create, questioning the assumptions that are built into our technology.
Making sure that it aligns with our values.
Right. Because if we're not careful, we risk creating a world where technology dictates our choices rather than expands them.
It's almost like a modern version of the myth of Sisyphus, condemned to endlessly push that boulder uphill only to have it roll back down again. Are we destined to be trapped in this cycle of labor and consumption?
It's a real danger. But Arendt believed there was another path.
What is it?
It's the vita activa, the active life.
Sounds exhausting.
It can be, but it's also incredibly rewarding.
So how do we embrace this vita activa in a world that's constantly trying to pull us in the opposite direction?
By making conscious choices.
Yeah.
To engage, to participate, to step outside our comfort zones.
And to remember that we're not just cogs in a machine.
Right. We're human beings with the
Doesn't
power to shape the world around us.
And that's a power we should never take for granted.
Exactly.
It's amazing how Arendt's ideas from like half a century ago are still so relevant today.
Right. She was way ahead of her time.
And so we've talked about labor work and action and all these forces that are pushing us towards passivity. But what can we actually do about it? How do we cultivate that worldliness that Arendt talked about?
It's not about like rejecting technology or anything. It's about using it wisely.
Making sure it serves us and doesn't like enslave us.
Exactly. We have to remember that we're not just consumers, but creators. We have the power to shape our world.
But how do we do that when everything is so mass-produced and disposable?
Yeah.
It's like we're drowning in stuff, but none of it really means anything.
Right. But that's why Arndt's emphasis on action is so important. It's about reclaiming our agency.
So every time we choose to have a real conversation with someone, instead of just scrolling through our phones.
Or when we buy something from a local artist instead of some big corporation.
Or even just like taking a walk in nature and really appreciating the beauty around us.
Exactly. Those are all acts of defiance in a way.
Defiance against what?
Against this idea that we're just passive consumers. That we don't have any power to shape our own lives.
I never thought of it that way, but yeah, I can see that.
It's about taking back control. And it starts with those small choices.
One thing that really stuck with me from Arendt's work is her emphasis on storytelling.
Oh, yeah. She believed that stories are how we make sense of the world.
And how we connect with each other.
Exactly. And every action we take, every choice we make, becomes part of our own personal story.
But also part of a larger story, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. It's like throwing a pebble in a pond and watching the ripples spread outward.
So the question is, what kind of ripples do we want to create? What kind of story do we want to tell with our lives?
Those are big questions, but important ones to ask.
And I think Arndt would say that it's not enough to just ask those questions. We have to act on them.
Exactly. It's about stepping into that space of possibility, embracing the uncertainty, and knowing that even small acts can make a difference.
Well said. So here's the final thought I want to leave our listeners with. What small act of creation or connection can you bring into your world today?
Maybe it's writing a letter to a friend.
Or volunteering in your community.
Or simply taking a moment to appreciate the beauty of a sunset.
Whatever it is, let it be a reminder that you have the power to shape your world.
And that your story matters.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Hannah Arendt's The Human Condition.
It's been a pleasure.
And for all you listening out there, I encourage you to check out Arendt's work for yourself.
You might be surprised at how much it resonates with you even today.
Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.